Director Patel, I want to start by recognizing important work by the FBI to crack down on fraud. In one case, the FBI helped bring justice multiple former business owners who orchestrated a $205 million Medicare fraud scheme on the American people. And those business owners filed nearly 1 million false claims for services that they never provided to any patients.
Imagine watching federal agents build a case like bricklayers. One false Medicare claim at a time, nearly 1 million bricks stacked into a wall of fraud, only for Donald Trump to walk in with a golden hammer and smash the wall open. That is the frame of this Senate hearing, and Senator Patty Murray did not waste time pretending it was normal. She put FBI Director Kash Patel in the chair, named the crime, named the victims, named the money, and then dragged the room straight into the contradiction. The FBI helped crack down on a $25 million Medicare fraud scheme built around nearly 1 million false claims for services never provided to patients suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia, and substance abuse.
Very important, but I do have to say, unfortunately, President Trump, the guy who says he's going after fraud, granted this man, Lawrence Duran, clemency last June. He was set free and let off the hook for the $87 million he owed in restitution. And Trump granted clemency to Duran's business partner last February, cutting well short her 35-year prison term. He literally undid the important justice work the FBI served and let fraudsters off the hook, and I find that deeply disturbing. With that, I want to say, I want to take a moment to reiterate the important role of DOJ law enforcement in keeping all of us safe.
That is not paperwork fraud, that is people in pain being turned into invoices. And then came the part that made the room colder. Murray said Donald Trump, the man who claims he is going after fraud, granted clemency to Lawrence Duran, a man connected to that scheme, and let him off the hook for $87 million in restitution. She also said Trump granted clemency to Duran's business partner, cutting short a 35-year prison term. So the question becomes brutally simple. What is the point of law enforcement if political power can erase the consequence after the agents do the work? What is the point of thanking the FBI on Monday if, by Friday, the same system rewards the people they caught? This was not just Murray praising agents and then attacking Patel. It was a moral trap. She started by saying the FBI agents did important work, because that part is true. Then she showed the ugly second half. Justice can be investigated by professionals, prosecuted through the system, and still be weakened by one political decision from the top. That is why this hearing was not just about fraud. It was about whether accountability in America is real, or whether it only applies to people without friends in high places. And once Murray finished laying that first brick of contradiction, she turned the hearing from a fraud discussion into a resource trial.
But I worry that instead of pursuing these child abusers or terrorists or drug traffickers or other criminals, you have our agents spending time carrying out Stephen Miller's mass deportation agenda and harassing families and children. I want to ask you, Director Patel, how many FBI agents have been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement?
No one at the FBI has been reassigned to work solely on immigration, ma'am.
Well, I would differ with you because according to the Cato Institute, more than 2,000 FBI agents were reassigned to work on immigration enforcement in 2025. By the way, it's not just the FBI. More than 2,000 agents from the DEA, more than 600 from the Marshal Service, and more than 1,000 ATF agents are spending their time on immigration enforcement. That has really pulled critical, highly trained assets off of work to keep our communities safe from drugs and guns and other threats, and I find that deeply disturbing.
Because this is where the story gets sharper. Murray did not argue that FBI agents are useless. She did the opposite. She praised them first, then asked why highly trained law enforcement personnel were being pulled away from the exact work Americans are told they exist to do. That move matters because it blocks the cheap escape hatch. Nobody in that room could honestly say Murray was attacking the rank-and-file FBI agents who chase fraudsters, child abusers, terrorists, drug traffickers, and violent criminals. Her target was priorities. Her target was leadership. Her target was the political machine above the agents, the one that smiles for the camera, says law and order, and then quietly moves the pieces on the board, while ordinary families are left wondering who is actually watching the streets. So Murray asked Kash Patel a very direct question. How many FBI agents had been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement? Patel answered that no one at the FBI had been reassigned to work solely on immigration. That word solely did a lot of work. It sounded clean. It sounded narrow. It sounded like a denial, but only if the audience did not listen closely. Because Murray did not ask whether agents had been reassigned solely to immigration. She asked how many had been reassigned to work on immigration enforcement. That is a different question, and in a hearing, that difference is not a footnote. That difference is the whole door. Murray then cited the Cato Institute and said more than 2,000 FBI agents were reassigned to immigration enforcement in 2025. Then she widened the frame. More than 2,000 DEA agents, more than 600 Marshal Service agents, and more than 1,000 ATF agents were also spending time on immigration enforcement. That is not a staffing memo. That is a massive redirection of federal law enforcement power.
There are reports that you're using FBI resources to investigate journalists for reporting what's going on, and that is absolutely not what this committee intended when we funded the Bureau. So can you commit to this committee today that no agent hours have been pulled from other work like counterterrorism or violent crime investigations to work on matters related to negative press about you or your personal lawsuit?
Senator, I greatly appreciate the question, and I can tell you unequivocally, this FBI is targeting and investigating no journalists. This FBI is targeting no journalists. The Obama and Biden administrations targeted dozens of journalists, sent out 1,200 interviews.
And here is the obvious question
Biden.
Murray wanted the room to sit with. If those agents are spending time on immigration enforcement, what are they not spending time on? Every hour has a cost. Every assignment creates a vacancy somewhere else. Every agent moved into one political priority is an agent not fully focused on fentanyl trafficking, gun violence, organized gangs, child exploitation, public corruption, financial fraud, or violent crime. That is the kind of math Washington loves to hide. They call it resource allocation because that sounds boring enough to make people change the channel. But in real life, resource allocation means a case waits longer. A victim waits longer. A predator gets more time. A neighborhood gets less protection. A family gets told the system is working, while the people trained to work the case are sent somewhere else to serve the political slogan of the month. And that is why Warren's line of questioning hit harder than a normal budget complaint. She was not just saying, "I disagree with immigration enforcement." She was saying, why are elite federal law enforcement assets being redirected away from crimes that directly threaten public safety? That is a prosecutorial question. It does not need screaming. It just needs numbers, sequence, and motive. Then Murray moved into the leadership question, and the pressure got personal because she brought up reports about Patel's leadership and temperament at the FBI. She said that instead of righting the ship, Patel had taken to polygraphing employees to scare them and identify leakers. She referenced reports that FBI resources were being used to investigate journalists for reporting what was going on. And then she asked the cleanest version of the question. Could Patel commit that no agent hours had been pulled from counterterrorism, violent crime, or other core work to handle matters related to negative press about him or his personal lawsuit? Patel answered that the FBI was targeting and investigating no journalists.
And I will say this, there's one clear priority in Trump's overall budget, and it isn't law and order, it is war. Because while Trump is proposing cuts to programs that really do keep people safe, he wants to increase war spending by $500 billion. And I don't need to tell anyone here we are not going to bomb our way to safer communities. So I intend to help rip that budget up and write bills that keep families safe.
Murray cut him off when he tried to pivot to Obama and Biden. That was the correct move. Because this hearing was not a museum tour through previous administrations. This was a question about Patel's FBI, Patel's leadership, Patel's resource choices, and whether public safety work had been bent inward to protect the image of the man sitting in the director's chair. And that is where Patel's defense came in, sharp, rehearsed, and loaded with numbers. He did not sit there quietly and absorb Warren's criticism. He fired back with the kind of performance every agency head brings when the hearing starts closing in. A list of achievements, a wall of statistics, a scoreboard meant to drown out the accusation. Patel said this is what real leadership looks like at the FBI. Then he pointed to a 20-point drop in the homicide rate, 45,000 violent offenders arrested, 2,450 criminal gangs disrupted, 6,900 child victims located, 2,900 child predators and human traffickers arrested, and 8 of the top 10 most wanted fugitives in the world arrested in 14 months. On paper, that sounds powerful. And to be fair, those are not small numbers. If those figures are accurate and properly framed, they represent serious work by FBI agents and law enforcement teams. But that is exactly why this exchange becomes more complicated, not less. Because Warren's argument was never that FBI agents are doing nothing. Her argument was that good agents can still be placed under questionable leadership, and strong case numbers do not automatically erase concerns about priorities, judgment, or misuse of institutional power. That distinction matters. A police department can solve murders and still have a leadership problem. A hospital can save lives and still have an administrator wasting money, punishing whistleblowers, or hiding internal failures. A prosecutor's office can win convictions and still face legitimate questions about whether power is being used fairly. So when Patel answered Murray with statistics, he answered one part of the hearing, but not the whole charge. He proved activity. He asserted success. He defended the mission. But Murray was pressing something deeper. Whether the mission is being protected from politics, image management, personal grievance, and spectacle. That is the gap between performance and accountability. And in a Senate hearing, that gap is where the truth usually hides. Murray then came back to the point she clearly wanted on the record. She said she appreciated the work of FBI agents, but serious leadership was still a concern. That line is important because it separates the badge from the boss. She was not spitting on the men and women doing the cases. She was saying the people doing the cases deserve leadership that does not turn the Bureau into a branding exercise, a grievance machine, or a personal public relations bunker. Then she hit the image problem directly. Branded bourbon, what happened at the Olympics, jetting around the globe, and the broader concern that Patel's conduct had become a distraction from law and order. That is not just a style complaint. In law enforcement, appearance is not decoration. Appearance is trust. If the director of the FBI looks unreachable, unserious, self-promotional, or more focused on personal battles than public safety, that damage does not stay in Washington. It travels down to every courtroom where an FBI case needs credibility. It travels to every witness deciding whether to cooperate. It travels to every family waiting for justice and wondering whether the Bureau's leadership is locked in on their pain or locked in on its own image. That is why Warren's moral argument lands harder than a normal political jab. She was saying that leadership at the FBI has to carry the weight of the institution, not just enjoy the spotlight attached to it. Patel wanted the room to look at arrests. Murray wanted the room to look at judgment. Patel wanted the hearing to measure output. Murray wanted it to measure trust. And the ugly truth is that both things can exist at the same time. Agents can be doing extraordinary work, while the top of the institution still raises serious questions. That is not contradiction. That is government. That is why oversight exists. Because numbers can tell you what happened after the machine moved, but they do not always tell you who steered it, what got ignored, what got politicized, and what got quietly sacrificed along the way. And that brings this hearing to the real question underneath all the noise. This was not just Patty Murray versus Kash Patel. This was not just a Democrat pressing a Trump-appointed FBI director. And it was not just another committee room food fight where everyone performs outrage, clips the best 20 seconds, and walks away pretending the public got answers. The real issue is whether the American justice system still has a spine when power walks into the room. Because look at the chain Murray laid out. FBI agents chase a Medicare fraud scheme. Vulnerable patients are exploited. Taxpayers are robbed. The justice system imposes prison and restitution. Then Donald Trump grants clemency, and suddenly the punishment becomes negotiable. After that, Murray raises the question of federal agents being redirected toward immigration enforcement while violent crime, child exploitation, drugs, guns, fraud, and terrorism still demand attention. Then she presses Patel on whether FBI resources are being used to protect leadership from bad press instead of protecting the public from real threats. That is the lesson here. A justice system does not collapse only when someone openly burns the rulebook. Sometimes it weakens when powerful people make exceptions for allies, when agencies are bent toward political priorities, when leadership turns accountability into a branding problem, and when the public is expected to clap because the numbers sound impressive. Yes, arrests matter. Yes, child victims found matter. Yes, violent offenders taken off the street matter. But leadership also matters, because leadership decides whether those victories serve the public or become cover for something uglier. My view is simple. The FBI agents doing the hard work deserve praise, but the people at the top deserve scrutiny, especially when their decisions affect who gets investigated, who gets protected, who gets pardoned, and who gets forgotten. That is not anti-law enforcement. That is what pro-accountability actually means. So the question is not whether Kash Patel can read a list of wins. The question is whether the American people can trust the system behind those wins. And if justice can be undone by political loyalty, redirected by ideology, and defended with statistics instead of answers, then what exactly is left for ordinary Americans except the bill? If this breakdown gave you the full picture, hit like, leave your comment, share this video, and subscribe for more hearing analysis that follows the evidence, not the spin.